Hi! Welcome and welcome back. I've been thinking about the intro and what to say instead of just hi, but nothing feels quite right yet. Hello Starshine sounded kind of creepy, to be honest, and I've been nervous about trying anything since. Maybe something like, I don't know, Astronibs? I mean, it sounds ridiculous, which means I kind of love it. So, until further notice, or until I forget, consider yourselves astronibs, or cosmonibs, I guess, depending on where you're launching from. Anyways, this video was supposed to be a short, funny haha where I splotch out Troublemaker's Opon channel blue, do a little paper chromatography, and then rant about how this ink isn't blue. But then I found the rabbit hole, and I don't really want to rant about it anymore. What I'd like to do, eventually, is an overview video of the Troublemakers. Troublemakers? Yeah, that's what we're going to call the inks. At least what I can get in the US, and talk about what I learned just by going through the inks on their websites. Even if I'm heartbroken about the fact that I live in the wrong part of the world and can't get their whale shark ink. Love whale sharks. But I'm going to start with Opon Channel Blue because it's a dirty lie, and I'm going to try and stay on topic. Opon Channel Blue is a standard teal that leans green, not blue. It has a little bit of red sheen, but that is also not blue. So this made me curious, and I wanted to explore the ink a little bit. So this ink is handmade by Troublemaker, which is an independent ink maker out of the Philippines. Googling Opon channel from a predominantly Anglo area of the world is singularly unhelpful, but Opon channel Philippines leads you to a channel separating the city of Cebu from the island of Mactan. I think the channel itself is more commonly called Mactan Channel, but a lot of places in the Philippines seem to have multiple names, which may be a product of the staggeringly long history that the Philippines has of being colonized, but also is probably due to the fact that these islands have over 170 indigenous languages. I ended up going on a whole deep dive about the languages of the Philippines, which I wish I could talk about, but I just don't have enough footage to talk over. All that said, the teal of this ink does pretty closely match the teal that you see in the pictures of Mactan Channel, which also leans quite green. And when it dries, it has really lovely shading and some not overwhelming red sheen. Though, admittedly, it looks like a dramatic sheener in my video because I used a hero poster nib that I got for my birthday from my friends. And that is just because the nib put down a lot of ink all in one place. I'm still getting used to it. I also struggled to get the color of the splotch to show up right, and I had to fiddle with the settings of my camera pretty dramatically. By camera, I mean phone. I had to fiddle with the settings of my phone pretty dramatically because it kept looking, well, blue when I reviewed the footage, and I didn't want to seem completely out of pocket ranting about an ink that wasn't blue while all you guys can see is this teal that leans blue. I mentioned paper chromatography, and I actually did that before I did the comparison swatches, and that ended up affecting which inks I included on this circle swatch page. But I'm going to show the comparison swatches before the paper chromatography because I feel like it's a more straightforward comparison. I was looking for a hue match and ended up struggling with the basics of getting ink on paper, but not too much. And there is some adjusting and re-swatching that happens. Most of these inks are diamine inks, and most of those are from different Inkvent calendars. There are 2 organic studio inks, which I don't think you can find anymore, a Jacques Urban ink and a Colorverse ink. Both Season's Greetings and Aurora Borealis lean more blue than Opon Channel Blue, though you can't tell in the initial swatching of Season's Greetings. I do re-swatch this later. Next is Organic Studios Aldous Huxley, which is even more blue than the Diamines and very sheeny. This is one of the inks that you can't really find anymore. This is the point at which I realize that I'm going to have to do something about those swatches, and I go back with, it is a Horizon folded nib. This was also a birthday present, and I just tried to get a little bit more of the color in the swatch to compare to. Velvet Emerald is close, but is too light to really be able to tell very well. Holly and Garland are perhaps the closest, though Holly is, I think, a shade too green, and Garland has shimmer, which Opon Janel Blue does not. It's a blue shimmer, so it would make it less of a lie, but it's still a shimmer. At this point, I am just casting my net looking for anything that will come close, and I'm kind of kicking myself that I left a couple ink samples at work that might be close, namely Color vs. Map of Mars and KWZ's Sheen Machine. I do not swatch them here because going to get them was not an option, she says in Peak Lazy. So I try Emerald of Chivor from good old Jackie Urban. That does say Chivor here in a second, not Chiror, but again, it is way too blue. After fixing up the swatch for Season's Greetings, I just start swinging wildly. Crab Nebula from Colorverse is way too green, and Organic Studios Lab Series #1 is just an absolute bust. Total miss. I thought it would be a completely different color. Like, it looked kind of blue-green in the bottle, and I found a little kernel of hope, and I just held on to it. It wasn't it. But, like I said, when I started these comparison swatches, I knew that getting a near match was going to be difficult because I had already done the paper chromatography. I didn't get super fancy with that. There's no bleach artwork or flancy splotch. I speak real good, you guys. There's no fancy splotch patterns. I went with much safer materials because I have no way to keep cats from sticking their faces in what I'm doing unless I feel comfortable with them destroying carpet, and I didn't. So I started with water in my new Super Science beaker and a drop of ink from the eyedropper on some chromatography strips, and it was very quickly apparent that this was the wrong choice. I either had too much ink or too much water, or maybe the water was too polar for what I was doing. So when I set up a second time, I went with a much smaller dollop of ink, less water, and I also set up a baby beaker with some rice vinegar to see if a lower polarity solvent would solve the problem, and sure enough, it did.
Okay, so I will be doing this section on the lapel mic. Because I want to show and talk about the different paper chromatography strips. So these were the first two that I did with enormous blobs of ink and just plopping them in the water. It was a mess. All you can really see in this one is the trail upwards. Doesn't really show you much of anything. This was the chromatography strip with a smaller dab of ink in water. You can see that you can't really, it was too polar, and it shoved the ink all the way up to the top of the strip. So I decided to go for another easily available material, the rice vinegar, And as you can see, it has this really pretty like flame shape to it with this beautiful pink core. And that pink core is fascinating because I'm going to show you the dupe attempts here in a minute. And if you maybe were questioning why some of my swatches weren't even anywhere close to Opon Channel Blue, it's because once I started doing the chromatography for the dupes, I was so perplexed by why none of them matched. So the first ones I had, right, were Season's Greetings and Aurora Borealis. And those, on paper, looked the closest. And you can see that they are wildly different. You have a similar blue shell around this yellow core and something else, but it's that something else that is so perplexing. It looks gray, but I know that it's got to be a mixture of hues, and it just didn't separate. Aurora Borealis is interesting because there is just the faintest hint of pink that got pushed all the way up here. But I'm not sure that the camera will even pick that up. Aurora Borealis has nothing of the sort. But because these were so different, I just started looking at everything that I could. I was like, all right, Velvet Emerald, no. Aldous Huxley, this one was interesting. It's entirely too blue. There's too much blue. And it doesn't look like there's a whole lot on the interior of it. And all of these, the yellows look very similar. The yellow in here is bright. Like, I'm not even sure if that's in frame, but the yellow in Opon Channel Blue is like, it pops. So I kept going. I pulled out Holly. Holly also not even close, right? It's closer to Garland. And if you remember, like, Garland is fairly close to Opon Channel Blue as well. I started going a little bit outside of what I thought were going to match at all. Emeraude de Chivor, fascinatingly simple. I have no idea what's going on with this. It just, oops, just knocking things over. It just pushed the green up here. I pulled out the Organic Studios Lab series, even though I thought it was going to be a little bit more blue-green. It's not. I pulled out Crab Nebula. Crab Nebula looks actually the closest, just in terms of what colors are on the page, because it's got a little bit of a brighter yellow here. It's got some pink out here, but it's inverted and there's extra stuff. Like it looks like there is another yellow in here. Like there's multiple yellows. It's very weird. So I went a little crazy because I couldn't find anything that was quite like this one. And really, I think that is kind of a more interesting result, that nothing quite matched. It is beautiful and unique and interesting. And I think that's enough. So.
And that's it. Thank you for joining me this week. I hope that you enjoyed exploring this ink with me. It was wild and crazy, and I have no idea what is going on with my camera. Hopefully, I will see you next week. Bye.